Bam! The bar door swung open, the icy wind slapping me in the face. Inside, the usual Friday night buzz, loud music, flashing lights, the smell of spilled beer clinging to the air. But tonight, my eyes scanned the room with a laser focus. There, in the corner booth, tucked away like a secret, was Sarah. My fiancée. Except she wasn't alone. Across from her, a guy. Tall, dark hair, laughing at something she was saying. His hand brushed hers, lingering a beat too long. My blood ran cold. This wasn't working late on a big project. This was a full-fledged date. All the doubts, the suspicions gnawing at me over the past few weeks, solidified into a lead weight in my gut. I took a deep breath, trying to control the tremor in my hands. Walk away? No. Not after everything. I marched across the crowded room, the bass pounding in my chest. Sarah? My voice was a low growl. She looked up, her eyes widening in shock. Recognition flickered across her face, then morphed into something else, desperation. Babe? What are you doing here? That's a good question, I spat out, my gaze fixed on the guy who scrambled to his feet, a smirk playing on his lips. Mark, this is. Sarah started, her voice shaky. Mark, I finished for her, my eyes boring into his. Nice to meet you, buddy. The air crackled with tension. People around us started noticing the scene unfolding, their conversations dying down. This isn't what it looks like, Sarah stammered, desperation lacing her voice. Oh, it looks pretty clear to me, I countered. The anger was bubbling up, threatening to spill over. Can we talk about this outside? She pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. I considered it for a moment. Maybe talking things through was the right thing to do. But then I looked at Mark, his smug smile still lingering. No, not here, not with him watching. We're done, Sarah, I said, my voice flat, devoid of any emotion. It was the hardest sentence I'd ever spoken, but holding onto a lie felt worse. The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the bar, the music fading into the background noise. The weight in my gut had shifted, replaced by a hollow ache. But as I stepped out into the cool night air, one thing was crystal clear, there would be no wedding. No more lies. My stomach lurched as I stared at the receipt in my hand. It was crumpled in my fist, the logo of a fancy downtown restaurant glaring back at me. The date? 2 nights ago. The same night Sarah claimed she had a work emergency, and blew off our usual Tuesday dinner date. Work emergency, huh? I muttered to myself, anger rising in my chest. This wasn't a one-off. The unexplained late nights, the hushed phone calls, the missing jewelry, it all started to piece together like a bad puzzle. I marched into the living room, the crumpled receipt burning a hole in my pocket. Sarah was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. What's this? I demanded, shoving the receipt in front of her. She looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. The phone clattered to the floor with a thud. What is it? She stammered, her voice weak. This, I said, poking the receipt with a finger, is a bill from restaurant name. A very expensive restaurant you supposedly weren't at 2 nights ago. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Her face flushed red, then drained of color. I met a colleague for a drink after work, she mumbled, avoiding my gaze. A colleague? I scoffed. This place isn't exactly known for after-work drinks, Sarah. Just a quick thing, she pleaded. It meant nothing. I stared at her, my heart sinking. Then why lie about it? Why cancel dinner with me? She didn't answer. The longer the silence stretched, the more my suspicions gnawed at me. Look at me, Sarah, I said, my voice low and firm. Slowly, she met my gaze. Fear flickered in her eyes, but something else too, a defiance I hadn't seen before. In that moment, I knew. This wasn't just a work emergency, or a harmless drink with a colleague. This was something bigger, something I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Tell me the truth, I demanded, my voice tight with rising anger. What's going on? My heart hammered in my chest as I stared at the screen. It wasn't supposed to be unlocked. Sarah had left her laptop open for a second, just long enough to grab a coffee refill. But that second was all it took. There, nestled amongst work documents, was an email with a subject line that sent a jolt through me. Can't wait to see you tonight, winking face. The sender? Mark. The same name I'd seen on a previous email a few days ago, the one with the overly friendly tone. My stomach churned. This wasn't a work colleague anymore. This was something more. My mind raced. Should I confront her? Should I wait and gather more proof? The urge to blow the whole thing wide open was strong, but a sliver of reason held me back. What if I was jumping to conclusions? Just then, Sarah walked back in, a steaming mug in her hand. Relief flooded her face as she saw the laptop. "Oh good," she said, a forced smile playing on her lips. "I thought I left it open." I didn't move, my gaze fixed on the email. "Who's Mark?" My voice was a low growl. The smile vanished. Her eyes darted around the room, landing anywhere but on me. "Just a new guy at work," she mumbled. "The one with the 'can't wait to see you tonight' email?" I pressed, my voice laced with accusation. She flinched, finally meeting my gaze. "It's nothing," she stammered. "Just some work drinks." "Work drinks on a Saturday night?" I scoffed. "Don't take me for a fool, Sarah." The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with tension. The truth hung heavy in the silence, a bitter taste on my tongue. "Tell me the truth," I said, my voice tight with anger. "What's going on between you and this Mark?" Sarah hesitated, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Tears welled up in her eyes, but whether they were from guilt, fear, or something else entirely, I couldn't tell. She started, her voice cracking. But before she could finish, her phone buzzed on the table. A new message flashed on the screen. "Hey beautiful, ready for our night out?" The answer was clear. The truth, however, was something I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. The beat of the music throbbed in my chest, a frantic drum solo mirroring the one hammering in my head. Parked across the street, the familiar blue Honda confirmed my worst suspicions. It was Sarah's car, right outside the trendy bar I'd seen it parked at before. My grip tightened around the steering wheel. Volunteer night, she'd called it. Another lie piled on top of the ever-growing mountain of them. Anger, hot and raw, coursed through me. I couldn't take it anymore. The doubts, the gnawing suspicion, it all demanded an answer. Without a second thought, I threw the car in park and jumped out. My heart pounded in my ears as I sprinted across the street, the pulsing bass line from the bar a strange counterpoint to the storm brewing inside me. The bar door swung open with a whoosh. Inside, the air hung thick with smoke and the smell of spilled beer. My eyes scanned the room, searching. Then I saw her. Sarah. She was sitting at a corner booth, her head thrown back in laughter as a guy with dark hair leaned in close, his hand brushing hers. It was him, Mark, the guy from the flirty work emails. The blood drained from my face. The world seemed to slow down, the music fading into a distant hum. This wasn't work drinks. This was something far more sinister. Fury boiled over, a white-hot rage that threatened to consume me. I marched straight towards them, my steps heavy with anger. "Sarah?" My voice cut through the din, sharp and laced with ice. Her head snapped up, her eyes widening in shock. Recognition flickered across her face, then morphed into something else, panic. Babe?" She stammered, her voice cracking. "What are you doing here?" The man beside her, Mark, looked up from her, a smirk playing on his lips. He quickly pulled away, sensing the storm brewing. "This isn't what it looks like," Sarah blurted out, her voice desperate. But the lie died in her throat as my gaze met hers. All the doubts, the suspicions, the missing pieces, they all clicked into place with a horrifying clarity. "Don't insult my intelligence, Sarah," I spat out, my voice low and dangerous. Silence descended upon the table, thick and suffocating. People around us started noticing the scene unfolding, their conversations dying down. "We can talk about this outside," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. For a moment, I considered it. Maybe talking it out was what we needed. But then I looked at Mark, his smugness still lingering. There wouldn't be any talking, not here, not with him watching. "We're done, Sarah," I said, my voice flat, devoid of any emotion. It was the hardest sentence I'd ever spoken, but holding onto a lie felt worse. Her face drained of color. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. Without another look at either of them, I turned and walked out of the bar. The music slammed shut behind me, but the hollowness inside me echoed far louder. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, the insistent notification cutting through the tense silence of the apartment. I stared at it, heart hammering in my chest. It was Sarah. The urge to ignore it, to let it vibrate into oblivion, was strong. But a sick curiosity gnawed at me. What did she even have to say after everything? With a shaky hand, I picked up the phone. "Hello?" I answered, my voice gruff. "Mark, is that you?" Her voice, laced with confusion, came through the receiver. My blood ran cold. "Mark? What the hell are you talking about?" There was a beat of stunned silence, then a gasp. "Oh my God," she stammered. "This isn't Mark's phone?" The realization hit me like a physical blow. The phone wasn't hers. It was mine. I must have left it at the bar in the chaos of the night before. Fury boiled over again, hotter than before. Not just at Sarah, but at myself for this careless mistake. For giving her even an inch after everything. "Don't worry, Sarah," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "I got my phone back." Another tense silence followed, then, a shaky sigh. "Look, Mark," she started, then stopped. "Don't call me Mark," I cut her off, my voice low. "It's not gonna work." She didn't respond. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken words. "There's nothing left to say, Sarah," I finally said, my voice heavy with finality. Before she could even utter another word, I ended the call. The phone felt heavy in my hand, a physical reminder of the betrayal. Anger and hurt were a bitter cocktail churning in my stomach. But beneath it all, a sliver of relief flickered. Every interaction, every conversation with her just fueled the fire. This was a clean break. I tossed the phone on the table, the clatter echoing in the empty apartment. This wasn't my home anymore. It was time to start fresh, without the constant reminder of a future that never was. The rhythmic clinking of empty beer bottles echoed in the cramped apartment, a sad soundtrack to my misery. Another night, another attempt to drown the ache in my chest with cheap beer. My friends had been amazing. They rallied around me after the whole Sarah fiasco, dragged me to bars, tried to distract me. But the truth was, nothing could cut through the fog of hurt and anger that clung to me like a second skin. Work wasn't any better. My usual focus was shot. Deadlines loomed, emails went unanswered. My boss, a patient guy usually, finally pulled me aside for a talk. "Mark, you alright?" he asked, his brow furrowed. "You seem off lately." There it was again, Mark. The name Sarah accidentally called me on the phone felt like a brand new wound. "Yeah, just some personal stuff," I mumbled, avoiding his gaze. He didn't pry, thankfully. But the concern in his eyes hammered home another truth I couldn't keep hiding. Not from everyone. Social events, once a source of fun, held no appeal now. I bailed on plans, stopped answering calls. My tiny apartment, filled with the ghosts of a future that wouldn't be, became my prison. Sleep offered no escape either. Nightmares, vivid and cruel, replayed their laughter, their stolen intimacy, on a loop in my head. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford. One particularly bad night, staring at the flickering ceiling light, I finally cracked. I needed help. Needed someone to understand the mess I was in, someone not just offering beers and empty platitudes. So, with a shaky hand, I reached for my phone and booked a therapy session. A small step, but it felt like a tiny spark of hope in the overwhelming darkness. The rhythmic thump of the bass reverberated through my headphones, a counterpoint to the pounding of my heart. Not from heartbreak this time, but from exertion. Here, at the gym, surrounded by clanging weights and grunts of effort, I found a strange kind of solace. Punching the bag in front of me, sweat stinging my eyes, I channeled the anger, the hurt, everything that had been swirling inside me for weeks, into each blow. It wasn't a solution, but it was a release. After a brutal workout, I stumbled out of the gym, muscles aching but my mind a touch clearer. It wasn't a miracle cure, but it was a start. A step out of the darkness. The isolation hadn't helped. Realizing that, I reached out. Called a buddy from college, someone who wouldn't judge. We grabbed beers, reminisced, and for the first time in ages, genuine laughter filled the air. It felt good. Work was another hurdle. I scheduled a meeting with my boss, laid it all out, the breakup, the slump. He surprised me. Didn't offer empty platitudes, just a nod of understanding and a chance to catch up on missed work. The sense of accomplishment, however small, was a welcome change. It fueled a spark of determination. I dusted off that personal project I'd been putting off forever, learning Italian. Every completed lesson felt like a tiny victory, a step forward. Cleaning the apartment, once a chore, became a way to reclaim my space. A well-made meal, not greasy takeout, became a small act of self-care. Sleep, once a distant memory, slowly returned. My body, no longer fueled by adrenaline and despair, finally craved rest. Exploring new hobbies, things I'd never tried before, a pottery class, a weekend hike with friends, filled the void left by the old life. Dating wasn't a priority, but I wasn't closing myself off either. A friendly smile at the coffee shop, a casual conversation with a coworker. These weren't desperate attempts to replace Sarah, but baby steps towards rebuilding my confidence. The road to recovery was long, a winding path with its share of setbacks. But with each small victory, each step forward, the darkness receded a little further. The future, once uncertain, began to hold the promise of something new, something hopeful. My phone buzzed on the table, shattering the peaceful silence of my apartment. Glancing at the screen, my stomach clenched. It was a text from Sarah. Heart pounding, I debated for a moment. Did I even want to know what she had to say? With a deep breath, I opened the message. A wall of text filled the screen, an apology marathon. Terrible mistake. I miss you. Let's talk. The words blurred together, a desperate attempt to win back control of the narrative. I reread the message once, then twice. Anger, a familiar ache, threatened to bubble up. But this time, something else was there too, a cold, hard indifference. This wasn't weakness. It was clarity. Silence, I realized, was the strongest message I could send right now. I deleted the text without a response, the action a small but symbolic victory. The silence didn't last long. A few days later, it was Mike, a supposed mutual friend, calling. "Hey Mark," he started, his voice hesitant. "Sarah's really hurting. Just thought maybe you guys could talk, for closure?" Closure? The word felt like a slap in the face. Closure was for finished business deals, not shattered relationships built on lies. "Thanks, Mike," I said, my voice polite but firm. "Appreciate the offer, but I think it's best to move on." He stammered a bit, then mumbled a goodbye. The next blow came online. Scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a picture of Sarah, all smiles and laughter, supposedly having the time of her life. The caption read, "Weekend vibes." It was a pathetic attempt, a transparent ploy to make me jealous. And it failed miserably. All I saw was a woman desperate to rewrite the narrative, to paint herself as the victim. The urge to comment, to expose the truth, flickered briefly. Then I remembered the progress I'd made, the hard-won peace of mind. Instead, I closed the app with a sigh. Pity, not jealousy, was all I felt for her. That night, my phone buzzed again, this time with a group text from my closest friends. "Guys' night out." The message blared, followed by a string of laughing emojis. A smile tugged at my lips. These were the people who had held me together through the darkest days, who celebrated my small victories and offered unwavering support. Ignoring the drama playing out online, I focused on the real connections, the genuine laughter that awaited me. The night was filled with card games, bad jokes, and the comfortable camaraderie that only true friends could provide. In that moment, surrounded by genuine affection, I knew I wasn't alone. The road to healing was long, but with my support system by my side, I was no longer facing it alone. My phone chimed with an email notification as I walked into the office, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. Promotion. The word practically leapt off the screen, a stark contrast to the string of missed deadlines and disappointed glances from my boss just a few months ago. A grin stretched across my face. This wasn't just a promotion. It was a validation of the hard work I'd put in, the nights I stayed late to catch up, the grit I showed when things fell apart. It was proof that I could rise above the ashes of heartbreak. The rest of the day flew by in a whirlwind of congratulations and well wishes. My phone buzzed with messages from friends and family, their genuine excitement warming my heart. Taking a deep breath, I leaned back in my chair. It wasn't easy, the road to getting here. But somewhere between the therapy sessions, the sweat at the gym, and the late-night coding sessions, I'd rediscovered myself. The urge to rub it in, to send a celebratory text to a certain someone, flickered briefly. But then I remembered the pathetic attempt at social media happiness, the guilt trip texts I'd wisely ignored. No, this victory wasn't about her. It was about me. A few weeks later, I boarded a plane, the thrill of a solo trip tingling in my stomach. A place I'd always dreamed of visiting, a chance to explore a new culture and lose myself in the unfamiliar. The experience was exhilarating. From bustling markets to ancient ruins, each new site was a fresh perspective, a step away from the life I'd left behind. Back home, a new development unfolded. Laura, A coworker with a smile as bright as her intellect started catching my eye. We clicked on a level that surprised even me. Conversations flowed easily, and her genuine laughter was a welcome melody in my life. We took things slow, cautious not to rush into anything. But the connection was undeniable. There was no drama, no mind games, just a shared respect and a growing sense of something real. Then, one Friday night, as I enjoyed a celebratory dinner with friends at a new restaurant, the world tilted on its axis. There she was, Sarah, seated at a table across the room. My heart hammered in my chest for a moment, but it was a fleeting flicker of surprise, not a punch to the gut. Her eyes darted around, avoiding any contact with mine. She looked different, flustered, almost. I held my head high, a silent acknowledgement of the life I'd built without her. The life that was infinitely